Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, it's so good to have you here at the Republican Jewish Coalition. You're running for national office now?
Running for Congress in CD4 in Arizona. It's currently held by a Democrat, Greg Stanton, who we believe has been missing in action and is rubber stamped for the Biden policies. He has, I think, not had a serious challenge in the last 3 times he's run, and we believe strongly that I can flip the district and add a Republican seat to the chamber, and also be a good antidote to the Ilhan Omar's and Rashida Tlaib radicals of the Hamas caucus.
Because what's your family heritage or background?
So my family immigrated from Syria and left as political refugees, got asylum in the United States in '67. I was born in the U.S., grew up in Wisconsin, was on a Navy scholarship through medical school, served for 11 years as a naval officer, and then joined my father in practice. I've been in primary care practice in a small business in Phoenix and serving the Tempe and Mesa areas in Arizona. And, a couple things made me want to run. One is, after 9/11, I think the Muslim community has been poorly represented. Folks that were really anti-American, anti-Semitic were taking up the bandwidth, and I formed a foundation called the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and you've seen my work not only nationally but before Congress and globally. Secondly, with the pandemic, I saw my profession of medicine, primary care, weaponized by the government, in which we used medicine to shut down businesses, to take away the rights of citizens, to force mandate treatments like vaccines and other things, which is really not the role of government. And I'm running in order to preserve the freedoms that are the America that my parents came to celebrate, in which I could practice a form of faith that I couldn't do in the Middle East had I been raised there, and also practice a medicine more freely with my patients than anywhere in the world.
What's coming through this border? I read today that there are an abundance of Muslims from, you could say, Islamist societies around Europe, as well as the Middle East, coming through the border unchecked. What's coming through this border, and what threat do you think it poses to the security of the U.S.?
It's horrific to me as an Arizona citizen what I see hemorrhaging into our country. And as a doctor, I'll tell you, you got to stop the hemorrhaging and then treat the disease. The disease are folks that are immigrants that are not vetted for ideology. My parents were welcomed into this country, but they came because they wanted Americanism. They believed in the social contract. They believed in the Constitution. They didn't come here as anti-American, anti-Western, wanting to evangelize political Islam and spread a ideology that's an anathema to what it means to be American and Western. So the border hemorrhaging that's happening is bringing with it not only cartels and crime, but drugs that are laced in horrific doses that are terrorizing our kids, killing children, spreading drug use to levels that we've never seen before, and destroying our economy, destroying our foundation of our tax base in Arizona. And now you look in the economic situation that the Biden administration created, where they were printing money month after month, hand over fist. Now we have inflationary economy. It's almost as if when I cut my teeth on being a conservative, it was when I was in 8th grade as a Reagan supporter. I knew that Carter was the worst president, and now I think Biden has him up on that as the worst president, where we have an inflationary economy. Our families can't put bread and butter on the table because they're working 2 jobs to make less money, and it's time to get the engine of growth back in our American economy so that we can increase the tax base by lowering taxes, but letting the growth go back so that the government is decreasing its size rather than simply, members of Congress should not be voted in order to just spend more. That's not why you get elected. You get elected to lead, to educate Americans about anti-Semitism, about free speech, to protect this country in national security areas, and also to stand with our allies like Israel and like I'm seeing here at the Republican Jewish Coalition.
What about the concerns of your constituents, certainly, and the people around the country, about big tech's censorship of information, whether it be on a public health policy like Big Pharma, which I know is a tremendous pressure on independent thinking doctors, but also on information that's critical of the Democrat party line?
I can't tell you how big of an issue this is for so many Americans, and as I talk to folks in district, in CD4. You know, ASU is on our that campus is on our district, in our district at Arizona State University. And you know, as much as universities is a place to learn, they've turned into sort of this apologetic of wokeism, identity politics. You're hearing them say things that are just abhorrent, supporting Hamas. And you think back, okay, what should free speech be? Free speech should be about the defense of those that you might disagree with, but not endorsing hate speech. So what happened, and it's almost been turned upside down. If you disagreed with the vaccine, you were taken offline. While you should have ability to decide whether you're going to get a vaccine or not, and debate it. And physicians, that's how we talk to our patients, and that sort of went out the window as medicine was weaponized and patients were forced into things. And big tech needs to be looked at almost like utilities in some ways, in that, yes, they're private companies, but if they start becoming arms of one political party, as we saw with the Democrat Party controlling, you know, what happened with the Hunter Biden information and how that was tanked right before the election, you can't tell me that did not have an impact on the election by removing that information from the bandwidth of American discourse right at the time of the election. So if we're going to have free speech, it needs to be free speech for all. It needs to be not only equitable on things that you disagree with, but not about in the name of public health do you suppress free speech. And I can tell you, people in Arizona know that I've been fighting this for a long time. Back after 9/11, I was confronting imams, confronting the Council on American Islamic Relations, Islamist groups across the country, and they were trying to shut me down, telling media and others not to put me on and cancel me, and it didn't work.
What concerns do you have about the left exploiting fear of Islamophobia to allow for Islamo-Marxism to grow in the country?
So I think one of the reasons why my candidacy is important and at the right time is the left. We were calling alarm bells to the identity politics of the false racism called by the Islamophobia and, you know, the counter-Islamophobia industry, which was just trying to suppress criticism of theocratic Islam. And unfortunately, few listened at the time. And then comes the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement. There were lawless movements that were rioting, destroying businesses, and that was done in the name of free speech through a movement that was led by folks like Louis Farrakhan and other virulent anti-Semites that we said, listen, this is the red-green axis, the axis of the far-left progressivist socialists across the world, like the Chinese Communist Party, the Marxists, and with the green being the Islamists of the Muslim Brotherhood and the Khomeinists and other theocratic movements that are populist movements. So I can tell you from a position in Congress and now in this political platform that they're working together to destroy America. At the end of the day, they might hate each other, but at the current time globally, they have a common enemy. Russia, China, Iran, the Islamists have a common enemy of America, Israel, and the rest of the West. And they want to destroy us. And that's what my parents escaped in Syria, as the social fascists of Nasser and Assad worked with the Islamists when it was convenient to them, and they worked against them when they started to compete for power within the governments and the dictatorships that they had. So I'm here to tell folks that the AOCs of the world working with the Ilhan Omars is the exact same thing as what we saw in the Middle East and what you see in the UN with the Venezuelans of the world working with Iran to destroy Israel, to destroy America. They want to, from the halls of Congress, just like from the halls of the UN, to destroy America and destroy Israel. And I can be at the front of the tip of the sword against that, to be somebody who not only loves my country, but loves my faith. My wife and I raise our 3 kids that are 21, 19, and 15 to be devout Muslims, but love America also first, and also love their faith and their country.
What do you think about the Islamist influence in this Democrat administration? And I'm talking about specifically Valerie Jarrett and Robert Malley, who has now been exposed as having implemented Iranian agents, and the concern that people say, well, we can't criticize them if they're Muslim, or I'm Islamophobic.
Mm-hmm. It's mind-boggling the amount of influence the Islamists have in this administration. If you thought it was a lot during the Obama administration, it is just on steroids now, and that's because of the progressivist control. The AOCs are not only willfully in bed with the Ilhan Omars and Rashida Tlaibs, but they really share a worldview with them, which is that America should be minimized, America should be weakened, and that ultimately they want to create some type of global alliances with a socialist movement, a climate change movement, a environmental movement that will destroy our economic engine, destroy the principles that make us who we are, our constitutional principles, constantly making us apologize with DEI programs and other types of fake, contrived propagandist racism type programs. But actually, at the end of the day, I'll tell you, they're the bigots, because diversity to me is when you're able to have diverse ideas, and they do everything possible to have a homogenous ideology discussed, and it's never about diversity. To them, diversity is skin deep or about some faith identity movement, and it's not about real diversity of ideas and tolerance of varieties of opinion. And that's what I want to bring back to remind Americans. And that's one of the things, as much as they've always tried to, the Islamists have said that they want to shut me down, they seem to never show up when I go to speak, because they realize that it's rational. They'd be fighting rationality, and that's not what they want to do.
When is your primary coming up?
Our primary is the first week of August 2024, so we have to make a lot of ground and not only beat the pavement in the district, but I think this will be a national race, because two things. One, we're going to flip a seat from a Democrat once I win the primary, and secondly, I think that it'll change the branding, the platforming and messaging of the Republican Party, in that we can talk about conservative principles from an area of diversity and as the son of immigrants from the Middle East.
What have we learned from Arizona's investigation of voting improprieties, irregularities, that might help other states? And is it something that could be implemented in time to save you from Kari Lake's fate?
Well, I think that obviously we have learned a lot about all of the different mechanisms in which our elections have been challenged, whether it be the removal of things off the internet that should have been on, the interference with messaging, the interference. There are so many areas in which our elections get interfered with. At the end of the day, we need to move forward. At the end of the day, I think that, yes, our Arizona has been a laboratory to challenge many of these things, and we will continue to challenge them. But we also, in a democracy, as Churchill said, it's the worst form of government excluding all others. You know, so we want to move forward, and I've dedicated myself to also making sure that, you know, election authenticity and reality is true, and that there is no interference, but we need to move forward and not live in the past.